My name is Lydia Anderson. I am 38 years old. I am a family attorney in Birmingham, Alabama, where I have practiced for 11 years. My area of specialization is family law, divorces, custody disputes, guardianship arrangements, the legal architecture of families in conflict. I spend my professional life in situations where multiple people claim to be right, and the truth requires examining what each of them actually did and said, not what they say they did and said. I know what fairness requires. I know what it looks like to make a judgment without hearing both sides. I know what that costs. I know what it costs, because I have been watching it up close for 38 years. My father, Edward Anderson, is 65 years old. Like and subscribe the channel and tell us in comments from where you are watching this video. He is a retired contractor who lives in the house in Hoover, Alabama, where I grew up. He is a man I love. He is a man who has, for my entire life, made decisions about conflicts between me and my brother Ryan without asking me for my side. Not sometimes. Not in most cases. In every case that I can document, and I have documented them. The most recent case was a conflict over the care arrangements for my mother, who has been unwell. Ryan had a position. My father heard it. My father formed his opinion. He called me to tell me his opinion. I said, "Dad, you have not heard my side." He said, "I know what happened." I said, "How?" He said, "Ryan told me." I asked him just once, when was the last time he had asked for my side first? He could not answer. Not because he was being stubborn or defensive, because there was no last time. There was no first time. In 38 years of family decisions, Edward Anderson had never asked for Lydia's side before forming his opinion. I am an attorney. I know what you call that. I know what it means to proceed on one party's account without seeking the other. I know what that produces. I know what it says about who is considered credible and whose account is worth seeking. And I know that the specific injustice I had been living inside for 38 years was not an accident and was not an oversight. It was a pattern. A 30-year pattern. And I had finally, at 38 years old, decided to name it. Anderson family is a working-class Birmingham family in the specific sense of people who built everything they had through skilled labor and careful saving, and who are proud of that building in the way that people are proud of things that cost them something to achieve. My father was a contractor who started his own small company in his 30s and ran it for 25 years. My mother, Margaret, worked as a bookkeeper for the same medical practice for 30 years before she retired. We were not wealthy. We were stable, in the specific way that stability is built by people who never stopped thinking about what it cost. I am 38 years old. I have a law degree from the University of Alabama School of Law and 11 years of practice in family law. My brother Ryan is 42, 4 years older than me, and works in real estate in Hoover. He has a wife and 2 teenage sons and lives 15 minutes from my parents' house. I live 25 minutes away, on the other side of the city. Our parents have been married for 43 years. Edward and Margaret Anderson are, by any honest accounting, a devoted couple. They have built a life together with the specific, quiet devotion of people who decided a long time ago that commitment meant something, and have lived that decision consistently. My father is a man of strong opinions and strong loyalties. My mother is a woman of careful observation, and historically, limited expression of what she observes. That limited expression is something I am going to return to. The family dynamic has always been what I am describing. Not dramatically. There have been no scenes, no explosions, no events that would qualify as incidents in the conventional sense. The dynamic has been a structural feature, consistent, reliable, and cumulative. My father and my brother have a relationship that I would describe as aligned. They think the same way, they have the same reflexes, they make the same kind of jokes. They are similar people, and their similarity has always produced a natural alliance. I am not similar to my father. I am similar to my mother in the ways that matter. I observe, I weigh, I think before I speak. I do not fill a room with certainty. I fill a room with attention. My father finds this quality less legible than Ryan's certainty, and legibility has always correlated, in Edward Anderson's assessments, with credibility. This is the structural problem, not malice, not hatred of his daughter, A preference, built over decades, for the account that comes from the person who sounds most like himself. Ryan sounds most like himself. Ryan's account is therefore the account that is most easily received, most easily trusted, most easily acted upon. Lydia's account is slower, more qualified, more attentive to complexity. Lydia's account requires more work to receive. Edward Anderson has not done that work for 38 years. And the consequences of that preference have compounded across 38 years of family decisions. And the consequence of the care conflict was the one that finally produced the conversation at the kitchen table with the list between us. My father is 65 years old. He is a solid man in the physical sense, the build of someone who spent 30 years doing physical work and who carries the body of that work even in retirement. He is warm in the way of Southern men of his generation and background. He tells stories, he makes people laugh, he expresses love through provision and the occasional well-timed joke. He is not cold. He is not deliberately unkind. He is the kind of man who would be described by most people who know him as a good man. He is also, in the specific domain of his daughter, a man who has never quite seen her fully. Not because she was invisible, I am a family attorney with an established practice, a woman who has built something real. Not because she was unloved. I was loved. I am confident of that. But loved and seen are different things, and my father has loved me without consistently seeing me, and the difference between the two has been visible in the pattern I am about to describe. The specific quality of my father that produces this pattern. He is a man who forms opinions quickly and defends them vigorously. He is not a man who revises. Revision feels, to Edward Anderson, like defeat. The fastest account to reach him is the one he forms his opinion from, and the opinion formed from that account is the one he will hold against subsequent information, because holding it is, to him, a form of consistency. He calls this being decisive. I call it being premature. Ryan is 4 years older than me and has always been the first to arrive with the account. Not because he is dishonest. Ryan, in his way, believes the accounts he gives. But because he is the one who calls my father first, who talks to him most regularly, who has the natural conversational access of someone whose life closely resembles his father's. They are in the same city doing related things, and they talk frequently. And in those frequent conversations, Ryan establishes the frame before anything requiring judgment has been brought to Edward Anderson officially. By the time I arrive, Edward Anderson already has a frame. He has received Ryan's account, consciously or through accumulated proximity, and the frame has set. My account, when offered, does not replace the frame. It is received through the frame. It is filtered. And in the filtering, the parts of my account that do not fit Ryan's frame are discarded or minimized, and the parts that do fit are integrated as confirmation. I know this mechanism. I see it professionally in custody cases where one parent has established a narrative before the other has had access to the court. The mechanism is the same. The first account shapes the architecture. Subsequent accounts are evaluated against it rather than alongside it. And the person who arrives second, who is always me, is always at a structural disadvantage. What is different in the family context from the legal context is that in the legal context there are rules designed to address this. Discovery, due process, the requirement that both parties be heard. There is no such structure in a family dinner table. There is no rule that says, Edward Anderson must hear Lydia's account before forming his opinion. The only thing that could create that rule was Edward Anderson choosing to create it. He never did. I have thought about why for a long time. My best understanding, the absence of curiosity about my account was not a decision, it was a default. He defaulted to Ryan's account because Ryan's account was available and legible and aligned with how Edward Anderson understood the world. My account required effort to seek and effort to receive. He did not make that effort, not consciously, just not. Ryan Anderson is 42 years old, and he is my brother, and I want to give him the honest description he deserves, which means giving him both the things that are genuinely good about him and the things that are relevant to this story. He is a good father. He coaches his older son's soccer team and he shows up consistently for both boys in the specific, physical way that my father showed up for him, and I respect that continuity. He is competent in his work and has built something real in his real estate practice. He is, in the broad strokes of a life, a person who is doing what he set out to do. He is also a person who has, for 42 years, occupied the favored position in the Anderson family dynamic and has never fully examined what that position costs me. Not because he is cruel, because the favored position is comfortable, and comfortable positions do not invite examination. He has never needed to ask, is the way Dad treats me and the way Dad treats Lydia equivalent? He has never needed to ask, because the answer would have required him to sit with something that would have been uncomfortable to sit with. And the favored position is specifically the position of not needing to sit with that. Ryan is not the villain of this story. I want to be clear about that, because it would be easy to make him the villain and it would not be accurate. The pattern I am describing is my father's pattern, not Ryan's. Ryan did not create the alignment between himself and our father. He did not strategically undermine my credibility with our father. He simply presented his account, as people do, and was heard, as people expect to be, and moved on. The structural problem was that my account was not sought with the same consistency that his was offered. What Ryan could have done, and what I believe he should have done at some point in the last 30 years, was notice. He is not stupid. He is not inattentive. He has seen the pattern. I believe he has seen it and has chosen, as people choose comfortable things, not to name it. Not to say, Dad, you should hear Lydia's side too. Not to say, I notice you always call me first. Not to say, I think there is something unequal happening here. He did not say those things. I do not believe he will say them now. What I believe is that the care conflict and its aftermath will eventually require Ryan to acknowledge, in some form, that the dynamic existed. Whether he will have the capacity for that acknowledgement is not something I can predict. What I know is that I have stopped waiting for it, and that the conversation at the kitchen table with my father was not about Ryan. It was about Edward Anderson, who made choices that Ryan did not make. I have a list. I have been keeping it informally for years, not a formal document, just the record a person keeps in their memory when they are paying attention to something that matters. For the purpose of the conversation I was planning, I formalized it. I wrote it out. I gave it dates and context. The earliest instance I can document with confidence, I was 9 years old. Ryan was 13. We had a conflict about something I no longer remember the specific content of, the kind of thing 9 and 13-year-olds fight about. My father was called in to adjudicate. He heard Ryan's account. He issued his judgment. I do not remember what he decided, but I remember, with the clarity that certain childhood moments retain, that he had not asked me what had happened. When I said that he had not heard my side, he said, Ryan told me what happened. I said, he did not see all of it. My father said, that is enough. That is enough. The account of the 13-year-old was enough. The account of the 9-year-old was not sought. Middle school, a conflict about a school event both of us wanted to attend, requiring a parental decision about which one would use the family car. My father decided in Ryan's favor. He had not asked me about my event. When I asked why he had not asked, he said Ryan had already mentioned it. High school, a conflict about money, a modest amount, but meaningful in the context of a teenage girl with limited resources, that Ryan had borrowed from me and not returned. I had asked my father to help me get it back. My father said he had spoken with Ryan and Ryan did not remember the loan. My father's conclusion, there was no loan or the terms had been misunderstood. He had not asked me what I remembered. He had asked Ryan, received Ryan's account, and issued his conclusion. College, when I decided to attend the University of Alabama School of Law, rather than come home and work in my father's contracting business, which Ryan had done, briefly, and which my father had expected might also be my path, my father expressed disappointment in a conversation that I later learned he had pre-processed with Ryan. Ryan had told him it was a sign that I was distancing myself from the family. My father received this account and addressed the distance when speaking to me, rather than asking me why I had made the choice I had made. I had made it because I wanted to be a lawyer. That was not a complicated answer. It was also an answer he never sought. Early career. I was 30 and had been practicing law for 3 years and had just made partner, not a formal partnership, but a significant promotion that I was proud of. I told my parents over a Sunday dinner. My father said, "That is good news, Lydia." He said it without the weight of his congratulations for Ryan's real estate business launch 2 years earlier, which had been the occasion of a celebratory dinner he had organized. I am not asking for identical responses. I am noting that the responses were not equivalent, and that the non-equivalence tracked something. And then, the care decisions. The years since my mother's health began to decline, the management of my mother's medical appointments and medications and the scheduling of care support. I had been the one managing most of this. I live 25 minutes away and I am more available during the day, given the flexibility of my schedule, than Ryan, who has a heavier client load. I had not resented this. It was the appropriate division of labor given the circumstances. I had, however, been increasingly aware that when decisions needed to be made about my mother's care, Ryan's opinion was the one that shaped my father's position. The care conflict I am about to describe was not the first time this happened. It was the most significant time, and it was the time that I had finally decided not to absorb without naming. My mother's name is Margaret Anderson, and she is 63 years old, and she has been managing type 2 diabetes for 7 years with the careful, disciplined attention of a woman who takes her health seriously, and who has, in that care, leaned on me more than on Ryan, because I am the one who is more available, and who, as an attorney, am more comfortable with the administrative and logistical dimensions of healthcare navigation. In the spring of this year, her condition required an adjustment. Her endocrinologist recommended a change in her care routine that included more frequent monitoring and the consideration of an in-home care aide for a few hours each day. I had been managing the discussion with her medical team, and I had been consulting with my mother about what she wanted. My mother, being the person she is, had a specific position. She wanted the minimum necessary intervention, she valued her independence, and she had concerns about the cost of in-home care. I had been working with her to find a solution that respected her preferences. Ryan did not know the full details of these conversations. Ryan knew, in the general way of someone who is updated regularly but not involved in the logistics, that our mother's care had been under discussion. He had his own opinion about what should happen. He believed more aggressive intervention was appropriate, and he had expressed this to me in our sibling conversations. He also expressed it to our father. My father called me on a Tuesday in April. He said, "I've been talking with Ryan about your mother's situation. I think you need to do more for her. She needs full-time help, and you are not moving fast enough." I said, "Dad, I have been managing Mom's care situation for 4 months. I have been to 3 medical appointments with her. I have spoken with her endocrinologist twice. I am working with Mom on her preferences for care, which she has expressed clearly to me." "What did Ryan tell you?" He said, "He told me you are dragging your feet, and that Mom is not getting the care she needs." I said, "Has Mom told you she is not getting the care she needs?" He said, "Ryan is worried." I said, "Dad, I am asking about Mom, not Ryan. Has Mom expressed to you that she is not getting the care she needs?" He was quiet for a moment, then he said, "She doesn't like to complain." I said, "That is not an answer to my question." He said, "Ryan has concerns." And I sat with that for a moment. Ryan has concerns, and I understood that we were in the pattern again. The exact same pattern I had been in at 9 years old and at 14 and at 21 and at 30 and now at 38. Ryan had concerns. My father had heard those concerns. My father had formed his opinion. My account had not been sought. And in the absence of my account being sought, my account was going to be addressed through the frame of Ryan's account. I had been managing my mother's care for 4 months, and my father was calling me to tell me I was doing it wrong, on the basis of an account he had received from someone who had not been part of the managing. I did not lose my composure on the Tuesday phone call. This is a thing I have trained myself not to do in 38 years of this specific dynamic. Losing composure gives my father the ability to make the conversation about my reaction rather than about the substance. I have learned, over those years, to stay very close to the question. I said, Dad, I need you to hear something from me. I am not dragging my feet. I have been to 3 medical appointments with Mom. I speak with her endocrinologist regularly. I am working within Mom's preferences for her own care, which is my obligation as the person managing her care. She is 63 and cognitively intact, and her preferences are the ones that should organize her care plan. The reason things are moving at the pace they are moving is that I am respecting Mom's pace, which is what she has asked me to do. If Ryan has a different picture of the situation, it is because Ryan does not have the full picture. He said, Ryan is closer in age to your mother than you are. He is worried about her. I said, Ryan being worried does not make me wrong. Ryan's worry about the situation and the actual situation are separate things. You have heard Ryan's worry. You have not heard the actual situation. You called me to tell me I was doing it wrong before you asked me what I was doing. A silence. I said, this is what I want to talk to you about. Not just this situation. The pattern. The fact that in this conversation, like in every conversation I can remember about a conflict between me and Ryan, you had formed your opinion before you heard from me. He said, I was not forming an opinion. I was sharing a concern. I said, Ryan's concern, communicated to me as your concern, without my account being sought. That is forming an opinion. That is telling me I am doing it wrong without asking me first whether I am doing it wrong. He said, Lydia, you are always doing this. You are always making everything into a legal case. I said, Dad, I am going to come and talk to you in person. I have something I want to show you and something I want to ask you. Can we meet at the house on Saturday? He said yes. He said it with the wariness of someone who knows that a conversation has been proposed that he does not have full information about. I spent the next 4 days preparing. Not emotionally, I had been preparing for this conversation emotionally for 38 years. Practically, I formalized the list, I organized it by decade, I added the care conflict at the end, and I prepared the question. The question is, when was the last time you asked for my side first? I want to explain why this question, and not another, because I chose it deliberately after considering several alternatives. I could have asked, why do you always take Ryan's side? That question is an accusation. It invites defense. It puts him in a position where the conversation becomes about whether the characterization is fair rather than about the behavior itself. I could have asked, why do you not trust me? That question is too broad. It encompasses too many things and can be answered by denying the premise, which is not accurate. He does trust me in many respects, just not in the specific context of conflicts with Ryan. I could have asked, why do you hear Ryan's account before mine? That question is closer, but it implies that the order is the problem rather than the absence of my account being sought at all. When was the last time you asked for my side first? This question is specific. It asks for a date, an instance, a specific memory. It is not a characterization that can be disputed. It is a request for evidence of the opposite pattern, and if the opposite pattern does not exist, the question cannot be answered. I am an attorney. I know how to ask a question that cannot be answered without revealing the answer. The question was the most specific tool available to me for making the pattern undeniable without requiring my father to agree with my characterization of it. If he could answer the question, if he could say, last year, when the conflict about the property, I asked you first. Then I was wrong or my memory was imperfect, or the pattern was not as absolute as I had understood. If he could not answer it, the pattern was undeniable not because I had said so, but because no evidence of the opposite existed. I did not expect him to answer it. I had spent 38 years looking for the instance that would be the answer. I had never found one. But the question, asked out loud, in person, on Saturday, with the list between us, that was different from the certainty I had carried privately. The certainty spoken out loud becomes something that exists in the room, something that has been named. My mother, who was in the kitchen when I arrived on Saturday and who came to sit at the table partway through the conversation, heard the question. She heard the list. She heard my father's response, or his absence of response. And she said something she had never, in 63 years, said out loud. I put the list on the kitchen table. It was 2 pages, printed, organized by decade. I told my father, I want to show you something before I ask you the question. I want you to have the information I have before we have the conversation. He looked at the pages. He did not pick them up. He looked at them the way a person looks at something they know is going to be difficult. I said, this is a list of every significant conflict between me and Ryan that I can document, going back to when I was 9 years old. For each one, I have noted whether you heard my account before forming your position. I have a column for heard first, heard second, not sought. You can see the pattern. He looked at the pages. I gave him time. He read through them. He was quiet throughout, not resistant, not defensive, just quiet, reading. The first decade, 4 instances. My account not sought in 3 of them, sought but received second in 1. The second decade, 5 instances. My account not sought in 4, sought second in 1. The third decade, 6 instances, including the care conflict. My account not sought in 5, sought second in 1. The one instance where it was sought second was the one I remembered because it had been unusual. 15 documented instances across 30 years. 1 instance in which my account was sought at all, and in that instance it was sought after Ryan's. I said, I am not presenting this as a prosecution. I am presenting it as a record. I want you to have the record before I ask you the question, because the question needs to be asked with full information. He looked at the list. He looked at it for a long time. He said, I do not remember all of these. I said, I know, I remember them. I have been keeping this record for years, not on paper until now, but in my memory. These are the ones I can document with confidence. He said, Lydia, I have always loved you. I said, I know that, Dad. This is not about love, this is about fairness, and I want to ask you the question. He looked at me across the kitchen table with the list between us. My mother had come from the kitchen and was standing in the doorway. She had heard the word fairness. She had heard my father say he had always loved me. She was quiet in the doorway, the specific quiet of someone who has been waiting for a long time to hear a conversation she did not know how to start. I asked the question. I said, when was the last time you asked for my side first? My father looked at me, he looked at the list, he looked at me again. He did not answer. Not because he was being stubborn. Not because he was refusing to engage. He did not answer because he was doing what I had done for years, looking for the instance that would be the answer. Looking through his memory of 38 years of family decisions for the moment when he had called Lydia first, before Ryan, before he had formed an opinion. He could not find it. He said, he stopped, he said. There must have been, he stopped again, he looked at the list. He said, I do not remember a specific time. I said, neither do I. We sat with that, my father and I, across a kitchen table, with a 30-year record between us, sitting with the answer that no specific time produced. I want to tell you what it felt like to hear those words from my father. Not triumph, it did not feel like triumph. It felt like the specific, weary relief of a thing finally named. The name changes nothing about the past. It does not retroactively seek my account in the conflicts where it was not sought. It does not give me back the high school money, or the college dinner, or the car, or the care decisions. The name does not fix what was unfixed. But it is no longer unnamed. And unnamed is how things stay invisible. The pattern had been visible to me my entire life and invisible to him because he had never been required to look at it directly. The list required him to look. The question required him to look. And looking produced, I do not remember a specific time. He said, Lydia, I did not mean to. He stopped. He said, I did not think about it as a pattern. I said, I know you did not. I am telling you that it was. And I am asking you to think about it as a pattern going forward, because I am not going to keep having this conversation, and the only way we do not keep having it is if something changes. My mother, Margaret Anderson, is 63 years old. She has been married to my father for 43 years. She knows him better than anyone on earth. She has watched every Anderson family decision that has ever been made in the Anderson family kitchen. She was in the doorway when I asked the question. She heard my father say he did not remember a specific time. She came into the kitchen and she sat at the table, not across from my father beside me. She sat beside her daughter at the table that had held the list, and she looked at her husband. She said, Edward, I want to say something. He looked at her. She said, I have watched this happen for 30 years. Not 38, I did not notice it when they were very small. But from the time Lydia was in middle school, I have watched you hear Ryan's account before Lydia's. I have watched you form your opinion from what Ryan told you and then present it to Lydia as fact. I have watched this happen over and over again, in small things and in large things, and I have never said anything. My father said, Margaret. She said, I am not finished. I never said anything because I did not know how to say it, and because I told myself it was not my place, and because I thought it would resolve itself. It did not resolve itself. It has been 30 years and my daughter has come to this table with a list of 30 years of not being heard, and I have to say, I am ashamed that I watched it happen and did not say so. My father was very still. She said, You are a good man, you love your children. You also have a blind spot about this, and I have enabled that blind spot for 30 years by not naming it. I am naming it now. Lydia has always deserved to be heard first. She is your daughter. She has always deserved what you gave Ryan without thinking about it. She looked at me. She said, I am sorry I did not say this years ago, Lydia. I saw it. I should have said so. The Saturday kitchen table conversation lasted 2.5 hours. By the end of it, my father had said 3 things that I am going to give you specifically, because they were the most significant things he has said to me in 38 years. He said, I see the pattern you are describing. I do not have an excuse for it. He said it without qualification and without the defensive packaging that male admissions of this kind often come in. He did not say, I was busy, or Ryan was more forthcoming, or I did not mean to do it. He said, I see it and I do not have an excuse. He said, I should have asked you more. I should have called you first. I should have heard your side before I formed any opinion. He used the word should 3 times in one sentence. That is the sentence of a man who has arrived at a moral judgment about his own behavior. And he said, I am sorry, Lydia. He said it looking at me, not at the table. He said it with the specific weight of a man in his mid-60s who has just understood that he has failed his daughter in a specific way for 30 years. I said, I know you are. And I meant it. I believed the apology was real. I also knew that the apology did not fix 30 years. It fixed the next conversation, maybe. It created the possibility of a different pattern. It did not create a different past. My mother called me the following Sunday. She said, Your father called Ryan on Saturday evening. I said, What did he say? She said, He told Ryan that he had learned something this weekend and that he had not been fair to you for a long time and that he was going to do better. He asked Ryan to come to dinner so they could talk about the care situation with all 3 of us present. I said, Ryan agreed, she said. He did. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I know. Ryan said, I know. The 3rd time in this series that 2 words have arrived with that specific weight. The weight of someone who has been told something that they have known and have not said, and who, in the presence of the naming, can no longer not say it. I am 38 years old. I am a family attorney. I spend my professional life in the architecture of family fairness, the legal structures that ensure both parties are heard, both accounts are considered, both people are given the same access to the judgment-making process. What I keep from this story is not the apology, though the apology was real and matters. Not the list, though the list was the tool that made the conversation possible. What I keep is the specific understanding of what it feels like to name a 30-year pattern out loud in the room where it was built, to the person who built it, with documentation. It does not feel like victory. Victory implies a contest, and this was not a contest. This was a daughter who had been waiting for 38 years to be heard, finally being heard, in the specific and literal sense. Heard out loud, in the presence of a witness, by the person who had failed to hear her. My mother's words at the kitchen table are the thing I return to most often. Not my father's apology, which was what I had been waiting for. My mother's words, "I am ashamed that I watched it happen and did not say so," are the ones that are most alive in me, because they are the words of a witness who finally spoke. The pattern had not been invisible to everyone. My mother had seen it. She had been ashamed of it. She had not said so for 30 years. On Saturday she said so. And the speaking of it, in front of my father, after 30 years, was the thing that made the room feel different from every room I had been in before. I have not yet had the full conversation with Ryan. It is coming. He said I know. What he knows and what he will do with what he knows is something I am watching. He has the opportunity, now that the pattern has been named, to either continue in the comfortable position or to examine what the comfortable position has cost me. I do not know which he will choose. My mother's care situation is being managed well. My father has called me twice since Saturday to check in on her care. He called me first, before calling Ryan. It is 2 calls. It is a beginning. I asked him, just once, when was the last time he asked for my side first? He could not answer. But he is trying to answer now. That is what I keep, the trying. If you stayed until the end, thank you. This story is for everyone who has spent their life being the second person whose side was heard. For everyone who grew up in a family with an unofficial credibility hierarchy, where one person's account was authoritative and another's was always filtered through the first. For everyone who has tried to name this dynamic and been told they were making it into a legal case. I want to say one thing directly. Being precise about unfairness is not the same as being combative. Naming a pattern with documentation is not aggression. It is the honest presentation of what the record shows to the person whose choices created it. You are allowed to bring evidence to a conversation about your own life. You are allowed to ask the question that requires a specific answer. And if you are the person who has been the favored child, who has had the easy access, the first call, the aligned position, I want to ask you the same question. When did you last ask for your sibling's side first? Do you know the answer? Can you give a date? If you cannot, you might want to think about what that means. Drop your city in the comments. Tell me if you have been the second one. I read every single one. Subscribe, hit the bell, share this. More stories coming. I'll see you next time.